although I'm more in the campus terror on some kind of scary parts of the city design, and I'm going to be talking about streets, but also like how can we make streets safe, comfortable, and enjoyable for kids. So I work for a nonprofit based here in New York called the National Association of City Transportation Officials for the Global Designing Citizen Initiative on the Streets for Kids program. Yes, it's very long, so I'm not going to acronymize it for you, but somehow we cannot change our name to make it shorter. Some of you might know NACTO through the design guidance that we produce, focusing on different transportation modes and different street users. And most importantly, this guidance is not just produced by us, it's produced by cities for the cities. It's endorsed by the city officials, by several countries, regions, municipalities, so that city practitioners can apply it and use it as a best practice to basically like shift the paradigm from highway engineering and building highways in our urban environments to more people-friendly, people-first streets and places. And currently we're working on the Designing Streets for Kids guide that's coming soon, and it's going to be available for free on our website. So then at NACTO, we use this guidance and apply it through policy, through capacity building and workshops, through community engagement, interventions, and temporary transformations of streets. And through metric collections, we work nationally and internationally. And here are some examples of the projects that we do. This is an intersection in Mumbai. So you can see before, like the time to cross the streets is enormous for tiny kids or someone elderly or vulnerable. It's almost impossible to feel safe. And this simple redesign that might feel like it's simple, you just go and paint, actually it requires a lot of volunteer hours and resources in pulling together all the stakeholders, getting all the permits, but it really changes the perspective and makes, you know, the city leaders kind of believe in this change by seeing it and experiencing it firsthand. Or this example in Fortaleza, Brazil, when the whole block was kind of transformed in a vibrant public space, like literally overnight. Again, with the help of a lot of volunteers, community members, and the team. So like Kathy and Bryson talked about public space and the importance of it, but how do you actually get to these places? If the bench is not just a bench, but how do you even get there from the beginning? You have to utilize the biggest public space asset that we have, which is city streets. We use them every day, regardless of where we go. So how can we make this huge potential and turn it into a great opportunity for kids and caregivers, and again, for everyone else? Unfortunately, a lot of cities have been failing their citizens in a lot of ways by designing streets just for cars and motorized use, making them very dangerous places to be. So why is this important? Again, kids and caregivers need to get to places and need to get there safely. Every day, unfortunately, more than 500 children die in road traffic crashes and injuries, and it doesn't account for disabilities and for missed learning opportunities. Like, it has broader impacts overall on communities and prevents them from becoming healthy adults. And it's not just kids that are dying, adults are dying too. And most importantly, all of this is preventable if only we designed our streets for people first and not for cars. And it's not only traffic crashes and incidents, it's also air pollution, kids are more vulnerable. The good news is, if we do harness the potential of streets as public spaces, they are becoming places where connections are made, where kids can meet with their peers, where they can make friends, where they interact with the caregivers. The caregivers have less stress, they have more positive interactions. It encourages people to stay longer, it makes your commute nicer, and it encourages you to kind of be outside more and be more physically active, to connect to your community, etc. So it has multiple benefits. And also thinking about realistic journeys. that regardless of your gender, when we design our transportation systems just to accommodate peak hour commutes, it is very different. And once you become a caregiver and you have to, take a bus, take a stroller on New York subway, all of a sudden you realize that basically like 2/3 of the city is not accessible to you, or you have to build 3 times more time. So just like in your daily journeys, think about like what would have been different if you were commuting with someone who is 3 years old, or someone who is like 95 years old. Would your commute be the same? Would you have any challenges? Does our city provide equal resources for everyone? So the fundamentals of Streets for Kids are improved and independent mobility and having places to pause, sit, and play. The mobility of kids have been declining globally. More and more parents are concerned to let them out. Again, kind of try to think about your experiences as teenagers. Probably you were spending more time independently and actually investigating your neighborhood, your city, versus now when kids, and for a reason, they're kind of contained in the containers, either at home or in private vehicles or at school, so we don't really allow them to be outside. We don't allow them to experience and research the city and to be independent adults. And then we don't build this extra places for pause and play. We don't have enough seating, benches, and again, when you're commuting with small children, you really need to pause, you need to, calm them down, they throw tantrums, you kind of have to have a safe space to deal with it. And very rarely this is even discussed in, architecture schools or in urban design, that what are these other experiences that people have on the street? It's not just the movement aspect of it, it's also the public space movement. And our work has been guided through these 3 key principles: making streets safe and healthy, comfortable and convenient, inspirational, educational. And I'm going to show you what it looks like in the built environment. So first and foremost, making this street experience safe by providing continuous network of sidewalks, making sure that there's enough space to walk for not only one person, but that actually a caregiver and a group of kids can walk side by side and actually have a conversation along the way, that there are ramps, that their speeds are safe, that there are signalized crossings, that the streets are safe, that you feel safe walking there in the evening, that there's enough lighting. Then bringing it slightly to the next level by providing extra amenities like street furniture, making sure that there's some social seating, wayfinding, trees and shade, other elements that make it more interesting, and then bringing it to the ultimate level of amazing street experience by allowing the street to kind of spill over and take over the adjacent facades by having murals, having some interactive signs, games. And kids use a lot of elements in a way that we don't intend to. So again, this design shouldn't be intentional for kids. A lot of times kids are not asking for the city to be childish. They actually ask for it to be interesting and engaging, and for their imagination actually to flourish. And like simple elements like cardboard boxes is the most favorite play tool on every play street, compared to imagination playground that is like fancy blue loose parts that probably you've seen, but it costs $5,000, $5,000 a kid. So not every community can afford it, but if you just provide simple sticks and boxes, kids play for like endless amount of time, and you have challenge, taking them back home. And ultimately, streets that are great for kids are good for everyone else. For someone to push a stroller or for someone to be in a wheelchair, you basically need similar safe sidewalks, safe continuous networks, and it's not only about pedestrian experience, it's also about bike infrastructure, like having protected bike lanes, having safe intersections is key for improving mobility and encouraging families to actually commute via non-motorized means, having reliable and affordable transit options, having bus stops that provide shelter, that have real-time information. The perception of time for children is very different than adults. They are bored quickly, they don't want to wait, and it creates this dangerous scenarios when if the kid is waiting for a bus at the bus stop and the bus is not coming for 30 minutes, they're more likely to run into the street, to get into a dangerous situation, or just like not actually get to places where they wanted to go, and their parents will not allow them to do it independently. Still, unfortunately, most places are looking like this, where they don't have enough safe infrastructure for the most vulnerable users. And we cannot really redesign people and kids, but we can redesign streets. So we all can use the power of design and research to address these challenges, to make sure that this is not that it's not rocket science in a way. It should be common knowledge. And there are a few key actions that everyone can take to make the streets better. I'm going to talk about a few of them. First and foremost, again, like slow the vehicles down, and not just by posting speed signs. It's not enough without enforcement. And again, a lot of cities don't have enough city budgets to enforce speeds on every street. But if you do it through design lens, that's where you see real results. The drivers drive slower on the more narrow lanes. If you have dedicated transit lanes, your transit arrives on time, etc. If you provide more pleasant experience for the sidewalks, the walkability improves. Like again, this example in Fortaleza where you have raised crossings, reduced parking, extended sidewalks, it immediately is filled with people and more people are using it. Adding trees and green spaces, there's numerous research studies that show the benefits of the exposure to nature. So just not forgetting to include it in our everyday commutes. And of course, adding play and learning. As someone mentioned earlier today in the morning that you have to have 400 repetitions to build new neuron connections, but through play, you only need 20. So making sure that we allow for the small play and learning experience to be folded into daily journeys is very important. This project is by Kaboom in Detroit, and it wasn't really expensive. It's really simple things that really make daily routines more delightful, more enjoyable, and thinking from 3 feet from an average height of a 3-year-old. And it's not only about height, it's also about the speed with which kids walk. Because again, if you are walking with a 3 or 5-year-old or with multiple kids, you probably need to build like twice more time than for an adult. And making sure that you kind of cross-check and talk to people who have different experiences, understand their challenges. That, for example, like level boarding can be a challenge. If you even have transit, like can you get there? A lot of cities in the US require you to fold a stroller when you get onto the bus. And if you've never experienced folding a stroller and having a crying kid at the same time, that's a very different experience, and probably someone who wrote that policy did not have it. Otherwise, I don't know why they would do it to people, but it is a reality. Like our policy is shaped by a lot of different factors, but the most vulnerable users are affected. So I want to leave you tonight with a kind of thinking about the intersection of built environment and public health. Because again, we had the very intense day today, and one of the outcomes was that there's a lot of overlap, but we're not thinking and collecting metrics in kind of similar fashion. So whenever you design or redesign something, think of yourself as like a public health practitioner, because your designs have broad impact on everyday lives for a lot of people. Thank you.